In telling the untold story, we must first accept the fact that it cannot be voiced in its entirety. This story, left to us in 4 unbreakable lines, is a map of the unknown rather than a chronicle of events. The philosophical system Khayyam constructs does not require numerous volumes or complex mathematical equations. It is laid out with absolutist, almost brutal precision. It encompasses the entire temporal scale of human existence, reducing it to 2 fixed points between which only an illusion of movement unfolds. Khayyam offers us the purest form of fatalism, where the beginning and the end are the only reliable constants in the cosmic equation. It is a narrative of necessity, not choice, a narrative that defines our universe as a symmetrical, cold space. The cradle mentioned by the poet is a metaphor not only for childhood, but for the primal singularity, the moment when matter acquires conscious form and begins its irreversible movement. This is the point from which the measurement of time begins for the individual, the moment when the infinity of the universe condenses into a tiny, helpless body. If the cradle is the starting point, then the coffin is the gravitational terminus, the place to which everything that has begun to exist is inevitably drawn. It is not merely a place of rest, but the final boundary, an absolute frontier beyond which no coordinate system known to us exists. Khayyam uses the coffin as definitive, indisputable evidence of our limitation, as the sole proof that time and space hold total power over us. He does not romanticize death, he objectifies it, turning it into a hard, undeniable fact that concludes all discussions of eternity or immortality. It is the end of a journey that leaves no chance for the path to continue. Life, reduced to this binary, becomes so compressed that it almost vanishes under the weight of its endpoints. The poet suggests we realize that our entire multidimensional reality, our emotions, achievements, and sufferings, is but a momentary flash between 2 absolute extremes. On a cosmic scale, this distance is so insignificant that any attempt to grant it permanent meaning seems a tragic illusion. He forces us to.
For those who appreciate quality literature, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam is the essential classic for your shelf. This collection is perfect both for your personal library and as a valuable gift. Don't miss the opportunity. Order your edition now. The direct purchase link is located below the video. The line, "That is all I know of fate," is perhaps the most radical statement in the entire quatrain, as it establishes clear boundaries of cognition. Khayyam does not claim that other information does not exist, but he acknowledges his own philosophical modesty, renouncing claims to divine knowledge or the comprehension of other worldly realms. He limits the sphere of certainty only to empirically proven facts, birth and death. This rejection of metaphysical speculation is the key to his untold story, which lies in honesty in the face of the unknowable. It is a philosophy that acknowledges the failure of reason when it encounters the truth of being. Fate, according to this definition, is not a complex.
Establishing this horizon of knowledge is an act of supreme philosophical courage, as most thinkers strive to expand the boundaries of the known rather than clearly define them. Khayyam draws a line beyond which he refuses to search, asserting that the truth sufficient for understanding man's place in the universe has already been revealed. This is reminiscent of a moment in astronomy when we know the diameter of a planet but feel no need to measure every stone on it. Instead of suffering from ignorance about what comes next, he finds solace in the immutability of what is already known. The next part of the quatrain shifts to an analysis of human behavior during this limited time span, highlighting the absurdity of material accumulation. The poet questions the purpose of treasures when there is a final boundary that rejects them, asserting that no amount of wealth can serve as a pass. He uses the image of loaded wagons as a symbol of excessive effort directed at preserving what is, by definition, temporary and non-transferable. This is a sharp critique of a society that.
The words provisions, treasures encompass not only gold or jewels, but all intangible accumulations we consider our achievements, fame, power, recognition. Khayyam hints that these possessions have a physical weight carried by the wagon, and it is precisely this weight that proves useless at the final border. This insight requires a reevaluation of what we consider valuable. If the cargo cannot cross the line, its true value equals zero. This is a philosophical weighing where all earthly gains prove lighter than air when measured against the scales of eternity. The wagon in this stanza serves not just as a vehicle, but as the vector of our personal existence, a mechanism moving relentlessly from cradle to coffin. By loading this wagon, we attempt to give meaning to our movement, to fill the space between the beginning and the end. But this wagon was never intended to carry cargo across the final boundary. It is a witness to our vain efforts, a symbol of our illusory journey. Its fullness.
The boundary is absolute and immovable. It is not merely a geographical point, but a fundamental law of nature separating the dimension of life from the dimension of non-existence. No treasures, no deals or tricks can change its position or temporarily abolish it. It is the final filter through which only a pure, immaterial element can pass. Khayyam emphasizes that we do not simply arrive at it, but we trudge, indicating the exhaustion and compulsiveness of this final journey. This boundary is universal for all, regardless of the wagon's load. Arriving empty is the culmination of the quatrain and the true untold story. Man, despite all his earthly wealth, comes to the final boundary with nothing. This emptiness is not only the absence of material goods, but a liberation from all burdens, duties, and identities we collected throughout life. Khayyam hints that this emptiness is our The poet formulates a universal law of non-transferability. The material cannot pass into the immaterial. This law operates similarly to the physical laws of thermodynamics, where energy is preserved, but its form of transfer is limited. In this context, treasures are a form of energy fixed in the world of life, lacking a mechanism for transition into the world beyond the boundary. This forces us to consider whether it is worth investing all our short time into creating a system that has a guaranteed reset mechanism at the end. Khayyam offers us a scientific philosophical view of the transit. There is a hidden symmetry between the state of the child in the cradle and the state of the one who arrives empty. A child is born without property, without treasures, and without burdens. They begin the journey in a pure, untouched state. Khayyam proves that the final goal. In a supernatural objectivity and profound tragedy, Khayyam paints a picture where the abandoned, empty wagon remains at the border as a silent witness to futility. This image is the key element that gives the stanza epic weight. We imagine a loaded transport stopping, and then, as if in a dream, all its contents dissolve, becoming invisible for the final inspection. Only the frame of the wagon remains, and the traveler, who suddenly realizes his lightness, his total weightlessness in the face of eternity. Khayyam's view of time is strictly cosmic.
The untold story is that the truth is shockingly simple, and it is precisely this simplicity that makes it incomprehensible to humanity. We crave complexity, multifacetedness, and mysteries, while Khayyam offers a formula that fits in the palm of a hand. This simplicity requires us to abandon all accumulated intellectual constructs used to fill the space between the cradle and the coffin. The poet discovered a fundamental axiom of being, and his genius lies in the fact that he did not attempt to complicate it. If the final result is always empty, then the question of the journey's meaning arises. Khayyam does not answer this directly, but his tone hints that the only meaning we can find lies in the awareness of this inevitable end. Knowledge of the boundary and the emptiness should become a catalyst for living with a lighter burden and fewer illusions. The traveler knows the wagon will not help, and it is this knowledge that makes him unique.
The accumulation of treasures, as Khayyam asserts, carries a double penalty. It is not only futility at the boundary, but a burden during the journey itself. A loaded wagon moves slower. It requires constant maintenance and protection, distracting attention from the landscapes that could have been seen in an empty state. The poet offers an inverted logic, where wealth becomes a form of poverty, as it weighs down the soul and hinders its inevitable movement toward weightlessness. Despite the grim fatalism, the notion of arriving empty may contain a hidden liberation that cannot be spoken of directly. If all material is cast off, Only the pure consciousness of the moment remains, unburdened by the past and unfocused on the future. This final emptiness can be interpreted not as a defeat, but as the ultimate purification, a state necessary for
Khayyam, as a philosopher who rejects emotional coloring, applies a purely logical approach to life, where the beginning and end are simply data points. His Untold story is a story of the calm acceptance of a harsh reality, of the absence of hysteria in the face of the inevitable. He looks at human commotions with the same cold attention with which an observer might watch the movement of planets, beautiful but entirely indifferent to their fate. The treasures with which we fill our wagons resemble sand held in the hand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Khayyam shows that the effort expended on accumulation is inversely proportional to the chances of preserving these objects. This is a universal law of material decay in time, which cannot be stopped by any human will.
If life is a segment defined by the cradle and the coffin, then all our efforts to collect treasures are but whimsical patterns we draw around this straight line. These patterns do not change the length of the segment and do not affect its endpoints. Khayyam invites us to see the geometry of our destiny as immutable and to stop drawing illusions where only fact exists. The true tragedy hidden in this stanza is that the sense of emptiness begins not at the boundary, but much earlier. The person who fanatically fills their wagon does so because of an internal emptiness they are trying to drown out. Khayyam hints that if we realize the final emptiness, we might stop creating illusory fillers in the present.
The Untold story, ultimately, turns out to be 4 lines containing the entirety of human experience. They are a complete, self-sufficient universe where there is birth, an end, futility of effort, and inexorable truth. Khayyam offers not a narrative, but a meditation on eternal laws, and our role is not to seek new details, but to accept the majesty of this concise, absolute truth. In this brevity lies the infinite, unbreakable wisdom of the poet.